I triumphed. He never failed. I triumphed, and he never fails. Yeah, heaven, hey God, heaven and earth shall pass away. Jesus, he never fails. I was sick and he never failed. When I was sick, body couldn't went well. He never failed. Yeah, let all heaven, oh God, let all heaven and earth shall pass away. Yeah. Jesus. I don't care what you're going through. I don't care what you've been through. Hey, Jesus. Hey, Jesus. Woo. He's got the power this morning. Jesus. If you got the faith, he's got the power. It may seem bad right now. Jesus. It may seem like everything is falling all apart. Jesus. It may seem like everybody's turning their backs on you. Jesus, my God. Never fails. No, 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 oh, Jesus. Yeah. No, 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 no. Never fails. Jesus. Able to restore you, yes, he is. Able to redeem you, yes, he can. Never fail. Thank you, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Satan's on the rampage. Jesus. Got all power, my God. Got all power. Never fails. Oh no. Put your trust in him. Jesus. Never I just feel this one right here. Got me all down. Yes. 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 gotta reach way down. Yeah. Jesus. Yes, sir. He never failed. No. Jesus. Yes, sir. Never. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Womack. Thank you, student. Yeah, somebody say, sing Jeffrey Womack, what they said on the street. Sing, yeah. This morning, Nehemiah chapter 3, as we continue this marvelous series. I think this is week number 6 or 7. Book of Nehemiah, entitled God the Rebuilder. Yes. I want to see if God will breathe anew and afresh on his word this morning. Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 5. Here we are, we've arrived after we've gotten permission, provision, and protection from King Artaxerxes in chapter 2. Go back home, Nehemiah has, to rebuild his homeland. At the end of chapter 2, he surveys the land and sees that indeed what the report was in chapter 1 was actually true. The walls have been destroyed, the gates have been burned with fire, the temple of his father's houses and tombs are in ruins. And here he surveys the land. And then in chapter 3, they began the work of rebuilding Jerusalem. They've already cut down trees. They got all the materials. Last week we learned that they used the materials that was left over from the ashes. And what you lose in the fire, you find the ashes. They began to use that equipment and material. And here the work has begun. Everything is going wonderful until verse 5. Let's read verse 5. Just one verse. Just one verse. Next to them, the men of Tekoa made repairs, but their nobles refused to put their shoulders to the work of the Lord. Wow. Everything is going great. Yes, sir. Permission, protection, provision, even an American Express card to get all the equipment you need. Work has begun. Everyone's joined together. We're all united. One goal. And then verse 5. The men of Tekoa refused to put their shoulders to the work. Before you sit down, let me tag this text. God's discordant notes. Discordant notes. You may be seated. Everything is going great. Permission, provision, protection. From King Artaxerxes, platinum American Express card to buy whatever materials you need, cut it from the trees. Even God, the first phase of the building began with the rubble that was left over from the destruction. Everybody has joined together, feet moving in one direction. Everything is going great. United we stand, divided we fall. Everything is going good. And then a discordant. Out of nowhere, a discordant. In an extremely tight schedule, I prayed that everything that needed to be right was in fact right for me to stand at the AT&T Stadium to watch the Dallas Cowboys play on this particular day. It was several years ago. I was a victim of a coincidence. It seemed like everything was divinely synchronated on the one hand, and everything that needed to be perfect at first was perfect. No mechanical wake-up or mishaps. No delays on the plane. All that needed to happen was moving in a direction to get me where I needed to be to watch the Lord's team play on this particular day. I sat on the plane, watched this Boeing 747 jet take off. make his arrogant ascent into the sky, got off the flight, couldn't help but thank God that although the flight was scheduled to arrive at one time, we're about 12 minutes ahead of schedule. Everything is going good. Sat down as if almost nothing could go wrong, took off on time, landed early, went down the escalator to baggage claim, and I was prepared to wait the typical 45-minute wait for my bag to come down and circle the corridor, but by the time I reached baggage claim, my bag was already circling the corridor. Everything is going great. All right. Not 3 miles, caught a quick ride to the airport parking lot. And as I retrieved my rental car from Hertz, Chevy Impala, black SS, full tank of gas, everything is going great. Then to make my way out of DFW, head down I-20 to Arlington and get hit by a colossal wall of traffic. No flashing emergency vehicles. I would sit there for 45 minutes. Finally, when I did make it to the game, it was during the middle of the third quarter. I had missed over half of the game. I got to the stadium. I had to remind myself that I was a Christian and a pastor of the Lord's church. I felt like God had set me up. God had hit me with this colossal interruption in an otherwise smooth day. I only mentioned that at the outset of the sermon to lay the groundwork for how Nehemiah must have felt in chapter 3. When everything around him is going perfect. Then in verse number 5, the men of Tekoa and their nobles refused to put their shoulders to the work. Because up until this point, if you've been following with us in these 6-7 weeks we've been in Nehemiah, you know that up until this point, everything has been going great. He's been experiencing divine synchronicity, if you will, where God takes several different elements and works them out for his good. He needed the king to be susceptible to his situation. Why are you so upset? Chapter 1, you are not ill. This is nothing but the sadness of heart. This is just a review. Yes, I'm not ill, but I am sad of heart. My homeland has been destroyed. Gates been burned. I've got to go back home and rebuild my homeland. How long will you be gone? You remember that 2 weeks ago. How long are you going to be gone? I'll give you a doctor's note excuse to miss a few weeks. Give you some PTO, some sick leave days. Don't forget to come back. He's received permission and provision that he asked for, and then he receives protection that he didn't even ask for. This is the last session. Everything has been going. He makes his passage home, surveys the land, it's destroyed, it's been burned with fire. The work begins. Then everything that was coming together is now about to fall apart. He needs the people to be inspired and encouraged. And here, what they've done is they reminded him that he ought to be grateful on the one hand, because everything has been going great. But then in verse 5, men of Tekoa refused to put their shoulders to the labor. When you see how God is creatively performing all of the necessary attributes, here in Nehemiah, you can only be thankful that God is allowing things to sail along smoothly up until this point. But all of us know when life is sailing along smoothly, there's probably a potential ripple waiting to threaten us. The Bible says that in the middle of all this positive momentum, in the middle of all this spiritual surges of energy, that the men of Tekoa decided not to put their shoulders to the work. Let me pause right here. Somebody should have told the men of Tekoa. But my mama always told us, you don't work. Y'all must have the same mama I had. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You're not going to enjoy the benefit of this rebuilding project if you're not going to participate in the work. That's a whole other sermon. I'll get to that in a moment. But here, it says they refuse, a better translation in the original Hebrew is they refuse to put their necks to the yoke.
Wow.
While everyone around them is participating and celebrating and believing and charged and energized, these men of Tekoa would not join in on the working effort. We don't know why. Verse 5, 6, 7, 8. The rest of the chapter doesn't give us an idea as to why. We can only spiritually speculate. We can only use our sanctified imagination to try to imagine why they didn't put their shoulders to the work. On the one hand, maybe they had an issue with Nehemiah. They didn't like his leadership style. I feel like this. Maybe they were not opposed to the work and the rebuilding. They were just opposed to the man who was leading it. They believed in what was happening. They just didn't believe in who was leading it. I wish I had a plan. They wanted and supported the work being done, but they weren't going to join in because they didn't like who was leading it. We don't know. We don't know. We can only spiritually speculate. Maybe they had a problem with it. Maybe they had a problem with the work itself. They're opposed to the work itself being carried out. Although they may have had a great deal of respect for Nehemiah, they didn't like the direction he was leading. They respected him as the leader, but they didn't like where he was leading. But we don't know. We can only spiritually speculate. Use our sanctified imagination. Maybe it was both. They didn't like the leader, and they didn't like where he was leading. Whatever it was, they decided in verse 5 that they were not going to join in the effort. And there it is. We don't know. This first group is thus far placed this potential ripple in an otherwise smooth circumstances. But can I tell you a secret? Because I hope you listen. I ain't preaching by no men of Tacoma. Because life is like it. Life can be going along smooth. And then you blink. And next to you is an awful discordant note. The symbol of some unwanted resistance to what you're trying to do and trying to be. Probably a strong indication that as we travel in life, that we too will be met by these threats to progression, these discordant notes. Those of you who are familiar with music and have a musical background, you'll know that the writers of sacred music have suggested that sometimes a composer, when working on a musical score, will intentionally insert a discordant note. Discordant meaning a bad note or off note or down note in an otherwise harmonious score. The goal of the inserted discordant note is to accentuate the harmony of the notes that come before and the notes that come after this bad discordant note. You know, to put a bad note in there so the good notes stand out. Yeah. That's what they do. That they'll insert this note that draws the listener's attention to how pure the sound was before the bad note and how flawless it was after the bad note. In other words, if you didn't have a bad note, you wouldn't really be able to appreciate the good note. I'm about to start preaching if y'all let me. And so the maestro will on purpose put in a bad note. Because before the bad note, you hadn't gotten too used to the good note. I'm going somewhere. And the reason that the maestro inserts the bad discordant notes is so that only can you appreciate the notes before the bad note, but once the bad note is over, you'll appreciate the notes after the bad note. I'm preaching to somebody here right now. Because I'm talking about God, the divine maestro, who says, I know you like a year ago, everything was going just fine. Life was sailing smoothly and divine synchronicity was all on your side and everything was nothing but smooth sailing. It was all good and then I know about a year ago. A bad note. Inserted into a harmonious score. What did it do? It made you appreciate life a little bit more than you did before. It makes you welcome what you had and thank God for what you had. The divine maestro, yes he will shake things up sometimes. Put a bad note in there so you can appreciate the good notes. Shake our lives to this dangerous level of comfort and makes you live life on the edge of your seat. We don't know today what God is writing in the spiritual melody of our lives. Wouldn't it be nice if the musical scores of our lives could exist without any of these discordant bad notes? God, in his wisdom, intentionally inserts these harsh, unpleasant notes. You and I can appreciate the harmony. Let me go back to this musical illustration. What happens is the discordant note, everyone, man, has to be resolved. That's a musical term. Come on. There's a resolution that has to take place to take you from a bad note back to a good note. And so when God inserts the bad note, he can't leave you on a bad note. In order for the musical score to be completed, it will not be completed until the bad note is resolved. And so there God is, directing the divine scores of our lives. And he's pointing and painting and directing and orchestrating and creating and sustaining. And there he is protecting and giving provision and permission. And there, as they make their way through life, he's organizing and constructing and conducting their lives. And boom, a bad note. And once the bad note comes, he finishes the score, but not until he resolves the bad note with the good note.
Wow.
I'm glad I got a maestro for God. A God that says, I'm not going to let the musical score of your life end on a bad note. I got a good note to resolve all of life's bad notes.
Wow.
I'm going somewhere.
Go ahead now.
I'm going somewhere. Those bad notes keep you from taking things for granted.
Yes, sir.
I'm preaching to a
Help us,
husband and wife now.
Help us, Doc.
Took their marriage for granted.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then a bad note
Wow.
makes you appreciate
Yeah.
the harmony of your marriage.
Yes, Lord.
I'm preaching to some parents.
Yes, sir.
Took their children for granted.
Mm.
And the bad note makes you appreciate the harmony
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
of your child's life.
Yes, sir.
I'm preaching to some employee right now.
Mm.
Took your job for granted.
Mm.
Showed up when you wanted to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Left when you felt like it.
Yeah.
2-hour restroom breaks.
Mm. Wow.
45-minute smoke breaks.
Wow.
And then boom,
Oh.
a bad note
Yes, sir. Yes,
to
sir.
make you appreciate
Mm.
the harmony of your job.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
preaching to some family member.
Mm.
We couldn't get you to come to the family reunion.
Mm.
You never showed up to any of the family functions. No birthdays, no celebration.
Wow.
Even when we had free crawfish, you wouldn't show up.
Wow.
And then boom, I
Yeah.
wish I had a praying church. A
Wow.
bad note makes you appreciate
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
the family.
Yes, sir.
The next thing you know, once that discordant note is resolved,
Yes, sir. Yes,
the
sir.
idea is this, that once the bad note is resolved back into a good note, your ear is supposed to appreciate the good notes.
Yes,
The
sir.
last thing you want
Yes, sir.
is for God to put a bad note in your life
Wow.
to make you appreciate the good notes.
Yes, sir.
And then once the bad note is gone, you go right back to how you were before. That's my fear
Wow.
with this pandemic. That's
Yes,
my
sir.
fear.
Yes,
I'm gonna
sir.
be pastoral.
Yes, sir.
That's my prayer. Lord, when this is all over,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
we don't know how long, we already preached that, we don't know how long, but whenever this is all over, please, don't let us go back
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
to the same way we were
Yeah.
before.
Yes, sir.
Don't let us go back to skipping family reunions.
Yeah.
Don't let us go back to taking life for granted.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Don't let us go back to taking family and friends and relationship and our loved ones for granted. Lord, when this is all,
Yeah.
please let the bad note allow us to appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
I'm done with it, but it shifts us back to our status. But we can be glad that God has resolved our bad notes
Yeah.
into a good note.
Yes, sir.
Here we are, the men of Tekoa, that they refuse to put their shoulders to the work. And this bad note becomes inserted to this score so that you and I don't go back to the unappreciative ways we had before. My pastor, Dr. West, was preaching this morning. I was watching morning devotion, preaching Joshua chapter 3, the crossing of the river. And old Dr. West was preaching that thing this morning. As he talked about how when they crossed the river, verse 17 talks about how they couldn't go back. The river was so high, it took God to stop the Jordan for them to get over. And once they got over, it became a no retreat zone.
Yeah.
And you can't go back to where you came from. Lord, please, when this is all over, when we get past all of this, and I believe we will, please don't let us go back.
That's good, Doc.
I'm done now. But it makes you appreciate life. Makes you appreciate what you have because of the bad notes. I'm done. I'm done. For those of us who know music, we know that it has to be resolved first before the musical score can end. I was fortunate to meet and have a relationship with Prof. George Edwards. He was my band director at that great university. That great university. Prairie View A&M University. That great, it's such a great university. And for many of us, whether we had fathers or not, he was like our college father, if you will. And he was a musical genius. Most of the music that we played, he had written himself, he arranged it himself, bass, clef, and treble clef. And when he would tune the band, he had what we call perfect pitch. Usually when you tune the band to make sure that all of the instruments are in tune, not sharp, not flat, you need a tuner to give you the perfect note in your ear. But he was born with perfect pitch, which means he would take the tuner and put it to the side and use his own natural ear to tell you whether you are on point or off key.
Wow.
He had perfect. You knew Prophet Edwards, whenever he heard a bad note, he'd do like this because his ear. Someone would be messing up with his ear because he could hear. Even though there's good notes all around, that's not what he heard. He heard that one. Cut it off, man. Who was that? Was that you, trumpet? Pull out, you flat. Push in, you sharp. Let's try it again. And then when he would hear bad note, it would make his skin crawl because his ear was attentive to hear.
Yeah.
But he didn't always hear the good note.
Yes, sir.
Because one thing about it, the bad note sticks out more than the good note.
Yeah. That's good, Doc.
I got time.
That's good, Doc. Go ahead.
All you ever hear about is the bad.
Yeah. Help us.
You got all this good that's been done.
Help us, Lord.
And what makes the news headline?
Yeah. Wow.
Is the bad.
Yes, sir.
All this ministry been done.
Yeah.
All this community effort been done. All of this work of the Lord been done. And what makes it to What they posted about is not the good work. They posted about a bad note. I'm telling you something though. God has a way of taking that bad note and fixing it to make it work out for your good. I'm done. That's my son. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
I have no idea in the economy of God.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How he keeps on making perfect pitch come from bad notes.
Yeah.
How in the world God keeps on allowing harmony
Yeah.
to come out of disharmony.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world the Lord is always able to make some good. I'm done preaching now. Come out of a bad situation. How in the world God can bring out of adversity some accomplishment. How God can bring some blessings out of burdens.
Yeah.
How God can bring some championships out of challenges.
Yes, sir.
How God can bring some deliverance out of despair.
Yeah.
Can bring some empowerment out of emptiness.
Yeah.
How God can bring some fulfillment out of failure.
Yeah.
And how God can bring some grace out of grief.
Yeah.
But there are times in life when God always allows some good to come from a bad note.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to report this morning that God has always brought some good out of a bad note.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bad note in 462 years of slavery.
Yeah.
That bad note had been playing for almost 500 years.
Yeah.
Then God allowed the Emancipation Proclamation
Yes,
to allow some good to come out of a bad situation.
wow.
It was a bad note in the South with oppression and segregation and Jim Crow and black codes. But the Lord allowed some good to come out of a bad situation. The Lord raised up a little preacher from Atlanta, Georgia. That allowed him to lead the civil rights movement and brought some good out of a bad situation. I'm glad the Lord always brings good out of a bad situation. It was a bad note when Trayvon Martin had died a few years ago. It was a bad note when that quarterback took the lead during the national anthem and everybody got upset. But after that bad note, here comes Black Lives Matter movement to give attention to racial profiling all over the country. God always brings some good out of a bad note. Now I want to hear this morning, but there was no worse note than what happened on that Friday. One Friday evening, it was a bad note at Calvary. Yes, Lord. That bad note, they took my Savior and hung him high on an old rugged cross. It was a bad note when they pierced him in his side. It was a bad note when they put a crown of thorns on his head. It was a bad note when he hung his head, and for me he died. He died until man was justified. Died until God was glorified. Died until you and I were sanctified. And when he died, it was a bad note when they laid him in a borrowed tomb. But I'm glad to report this morning that God always brings some good out of a bad note. Have I got one witness? Bright early Sunday morning. You don't mind if I say it like I feel it. Sunday morning, he brought some good out of a bad note. He got up with all power in his hands. I got to leave you here now, but have you rivers that seem uncrossable? Mountains you can't tunnel through. God specializes in things impossible, and he can do what no other power can do. So I thank God for my mountains. I thank God for my valleys. I thank God for the storms He saw me through. Because if I never had a problem, I wouldn't know that God could solve them. I wouldn't know what faith in God can do. Can you see? Yes, yes, yes. Why don't you help me help somebody in the room? Just find somebody and look in their direction and say, neighbor, I know it's been a bad note. I know it's been a discordant note. But look up toward heaven and say, anyway, you bless me, Lord. I'll be satisfied. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Is there anybody here tried by Jesus? Ain't He all right? Ain't He all right? One last time, I got one more thing to tell you. I want you to tell somebody else. Just look him in the face and say, neighbor, oh neighbor, I know it's been rough the last year. I know you've been putting up with a bad note, but I got a feeling. I got a feeling. I got a feeling. Everything gonna be all right. Do you believe it is? Do you believe it is? Say yes. Yes.